Hello! This video will delve into the cult of personality of Stalin and how he personally attacked it and despised it. Just a note, what I'm about to say to you is from an essay I found years ago by a guy named Brown Eggs on Tumblr. I tried to ask for his permission as to whether I can make part of his essay into a video, but his Tumblr has been down for a very long time. He had a website too, I remember, but I couldn't find it again. I asked around some places and no one really remembers if he was active on forums or something. I couldn't find anything. So if you are Brown Eggs, let me know and I'll put a link to your channel or website or blog or whatever in the description. Okay, let's get started. One of the most commonly made claims used to denounce Stalin and the Soviet Union under his leadership was that Stalin built up a cult of personality around himself. Let's examine that a little bit. Now, there was undoubtedly a cult of personality surrounding Stalin. I don't know of any serious historical account, either sympathetic to communist views or otherwise, which denies this. The question is whether Stalin himself was the source of this cult, or at least whether or not he was complicit in it. Now, Khrushchev seemed to think so, as in his so-called secret speech to the 20th Party Congress of the CPSU. He made the cult of personality the main part of his denunciation of Stalin and his policies. To quote part of his secret speech, Khrushchev said, "After Stalin's death, the Central Committee began implementing a policy of explaining concisely and consistently that it is impermissible and foreign to the spirit of Marxism-Leninism to elevate one person into a superman possessing supernatural characteristics akin to those of a god. Such a man supposedly knows everything, sees everything, thinks for everyone, can do anything, is infallible in his behavior. Such a belief about a man, and specifically about Stalin, was cultivated amongst us for years." Later on, he continues to say, "At present, we are concerned with a question which has immense importance for the party now and for the future, with how the cult of person of Stalin has been gradually growing, the cult which became at a certain specific stage the source of a whole series of exceedingly serious and grave perversions of party principles, of party democracy, of revolutionary legality." It's interesting that Khrushchev stopped short of outright accusing Stalin of being responsible for the cult of personality. Maybe because, as we're going to see, he couldn't have ever justified such a claim. But, in choosing to open his speech in this way, he made the personality cult the focus, and throughout the rest of the speech he took for granted that Stalin himself fostered the cult, and hoped that others would as well. Really, many did take it for granted, both within the CPSU, at least the portion that wasn't purged between the 20th and 22nd Party Congresses, and throughout the capitalist world. Of course, there is little disagreement that the elevating of one person to a quote-unquote superhuman possessing supernatural characteristics akin to those of a god is a very troublesome and unsavory thing. Stalin didn't disagree with this. All evidence indicates that Stalin opposed the personality cult surrounding him, and that he spent most of his leadership trying to counteract it. Now, I'm going to substantiate this a little bit. To quote Stalin's reply to the greetings of the workers of the chief railway workshops in Tiflis, quote, "I must say that in all conscience, comrades, that I do not deserve a good half of the flattering things that have been said here about me. I am, it appears, a hero of the October Revolution, the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, the leader of the Communist Internationale, a legendary warrior knight, and all the rest of it. This is absurd, comrades, and quite unnecessary exaggeration. It is the sort of thing that is usually said at the graveside of a departed revolutionary, but I have no intention of dying yet." In another letter, titled Letter to Comrade Shatunovsky, Stalin said this, "You speak of your devotion to me. Perhaps this is a phrase that came out accidentally. Perhaps. But if it is not a chance phrase, I would advise you to discard the quote-unquote principle of devotion to persons. It is not the Bolshevik way. Be devoted to the working class, its party, its state. That is a fine and useful thing, but do not confuse it with devotion to person, this vain and useless bauble of weak-minded intellectuals." Something interesting here is that you should keep in mind he said this in a private letter, not something meant for a public audience to be reading. He read of someone, quote-unquote, devoting themselves to him, and felt such disgust for the statement that he felt he needed to write a letter in response, correcting this. If this alone doesn't prove the humbleness of Stalin, then to be honest, you're in denial. In another letter, Talk with the German author Emil Ludwig, he said this, quote, Marxism does not deny at all the role played by outstanding individuals or that history is made by people, but great people are worth anything at all only to the extent that they are able to correctly understand these conditions, to understand how to change them. Individual persons cannot decide. Decisions of individuals are always or nearly always one-sided decisions. Never under any circumstances would our workers now tolerate power in the hands of one person. With us, personages of the greatest authority are reduced to non-entities, become mere ciphers as soon as the masses of the workers lose confidence in them. Anti-Stalinists and anti-communists may read these quotes and assume that Stalin was a hypocrite, that he was wearing a fashionable false modesty while actually building up a cult around himself. But Stalin's opposition to the cult of personality extended beyond just words. Stalin repeatedly objected to attempts to hold national festivities or propaganda exhibitions in honor of his birthday on the grounds that, quote-unquote, such undertakings lead to the strengthening of a cult of personality, which is harmful and incompatible with the spirit of our party. In 1937, the Politburo attempted to rename Moscow to Stalinodar, meaning gift of Stalin, but Stalin managed to convince them not to proceed. In 1938, Stalin opposed the publishing of a work titled The Stories of the Childhood of Stalin, not only because it contained lots of exaggerations and inaccuracies, but also because, in his own words, he said, quote, "The book has a tendency to engrave in the minds of Soviet children, and people in general, the personality cult of leaders, of infallible heroes." In 1945, the Supreme Soviet of the USSR awarded Stalin the Hero of the Soviet Union award, yet he refused to accept it. He could not, of course, prevent the Soviets from giving him the award after his death, though. But surely, insist the anti-Stalinists and anti-communists, a man as powerful as Stalin must have been able to do much, much more to curb the cult of personality surrounding him. Well, to quote an excellent response to this by Grover Furr, quote, "Some have argued that Stalin's opposition to the cult around himself must have been hypocrisy. After all, Stalin was so powerful that if he had really wanted to put a stop to the cult, he could have done so. But this argument assumes what it should prove. To assume that he was that powerful is also to assume that Stalin was in fact what the cult absurdly made him out to be, an autocrat with supreme power over everything and everyone in the USSR. Beside the fact that it's literally impossible to be that, in reality, Stalin was the General Secretary of the party's Central Committee. One person out of many in the Central Committee. Just as a side note, the General Secretary doesn't have any more power than anyone else, alright? Everything was voted on democratically and he only had one vote. Being General Secretary means more responsibilities, not more power. Also, he could be removed by the Central Committee at any time. Again, his was only one vote in the Politburo of the Central Committee. Something many don't know is that Stalin actually tried to resign from his post as General Secretary 4 times. 4. Each time his attempt was rejected. The last attempt he made was in the 19th Party Congress in October 1952, but that too was rejected. Those who continue to assert that the cult of personality was Stalin's doing are grasping at straws. There's literally no credible evidence of this, and a lot of evidence that suggests otherwise. I think it's about time we put this argument to rest. Really, if anybody can find a single instance where Stalin fostered the cult of personality, then I'll revoke this video, sure, why not? I just want to extend a special thanks to Brown Eggs for writing this amazing 14-page essay. I might actually someday make the rest of it into a video too, but I don't know, it depends if you guys want it. Alright, hope you liked this video, and let me know if you want more. All feedback is appreciated. Thank you for watching.